In today's show, a mailbag episode answering your questions about the Portland Trail Blazers. Welcome to Locked On Blazers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Trailblazers, your daily Portland Trailblazers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What up, world? It's your past first point guard and Trailblazers reporter, Mike Richmond. You're listening to another episode of Locked On Blazers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get podcasts and also on YouTube. Thanks for making this show your first listen. The final 3-episode week of the off season. You're listening to Wednesday, September 11th's program. We've got one more this week. It's going to be coming to you on Friday. And then starting next week, September 16th, we're back to 5 days a week for the next 10 months because the season is upon us. Get excited. In today's show, let's get into it. Let me tell you what we're about to get into. In today's show, it is a listener mailbag. It is a mailbag episode answering listener submitted questions all episode long. If you want to get into a future one of these, I usually mention it on the show, like, hey, I need some mailbag questions. But the way to reach out to me and to always do this is to send me an email, lockedonblazerspod@gmail.com. One more time for you. Locked on Blazers, that's the name of the podcast, pod, P-O-D, because I didn't get the email from Eric back in the day. LockedOnBlazersPod@gmail.com is the best place to find me. Always best place to find me if you want to reach out or whatever. That's where I'm at. I'm pretty good about responding to emails. I used to be better, but I'm still pretty good at it. Let's get into listener questions. This first one comes from listener Scott. Shout out to listener Scott. Just kidding. Scott's in the second segment. This first one comes from listener John. Shout out to listener John. John asks, I believe in the mission the Trailblazers seem to be preaching about defense. We just haven't seen it yet. I am curious that with this team being, not as good this upcoming season, can the defense still get better? And if it does, can we see a team that is geared for a faster pace and gets out and runs and gets out on the break? That is a slightly edited, longer email from listener John. Shout out to you, John. I appreciate it. Yeah, this is, I think, incredibly crucial considering that I think the Blazers have better defensive personnel this season than they did a year ago, and they were improved on defense a year ago. They finished 23rd in overall in the NBA, which I think for the outside observer is like, yeah, the Blazers still suck. They're one of the worst teams in the league on defense. But if you, dear listener, who have been in the mud, you know that they didn't finish bottom 3 in the league. You know they were improved on defense. Heck, if you watch the games, you could see particularly early in the season when they were a little healthier and everybody was around. There were times when they were just straight up like pretty good on defense. A lot of their early season success, like high level success, was kind of wizardry. Their teams were just smoking 3-pointers on them, and once the magic smoke and mirrors of just like opponents making like the league average number of expected threes because they were giving them up, their defense ended up being one of the worst bottom third of the league, but they were still improved. I think undoubtedly still improved, and I think adding defenders, particularly Denny Avdia. Donovan Clingan is going to be probably a pretty good defender in the NBA. I think actually he will be a good defender in the NBA. The offense is a whole nother thing, but I think I'm pretty confident that Clingan will end up being a pretty good defender in the league, and I think his long-term outlook is on the other side. But Denny Avdia is just a straight up good defender. Even early in Denny's career, when he was like not an offensive player, he was a pretty darn good defender. He can play. He's got some versatility on that end. I do think there is a tendency with like shiny new parts, particularly when any player joins a team, is that you say like, oh, he's an improvement, but you like that idea of improvement is like capital I with a little bit overstated, and you think like this is one of the best defenders in the league. Denny Avdia is a good defender who will help the Blazers on defense. Undoubtedly. He's not an all-world defender. Him alone is not going to prop the team up, but more Denny Avdia minutes, which means more Toumani Camara as sort of another defender option minutes. So you have 2+ defenders on the perimeter. More health from DeAndre Ayton, so you have less of the Duop Reith at center minutes, and Ayton is not much of a defensive player, but he's certainly an upgrade over Reith. There's reason to think this team will be improved on defense. The question, though, isn't whether they're going to get better on defense. I think a listener, John, thinks that, is drinking the Kool-Aid a little bit. Yeah, they could. They've got it in them. They could get there. I see the vision, and I kind of see the vision too. I think they'll be improved. How much? I don't know, but I think they'll be a little bit better. The question is, can they turn that good defense into running? Can this team get out of the half court and run? And the numbers last year are a little bit puzzling in that area. The Blazers were top 10 in the league, 7th in defensive turnover percentage. So like they forced the 7th highest percentage of turnovers by their opponent's fantasy team in the league. They forced turnovers pretty well. That was by far the strength of their defense, was forcing turnovers. At one point, in the first 20 or so games, they were at the top, right? They were 1 and 2 over the first quarter of the season in forcing turnovers. That didn't stay up there because it's hard to lead the league in anything, but 7th is good. That's a strength. That's a clear strength of this team. They ended up, giving up buckets at a pretty high rate, but they forcing turnovers was a strength. And yet, despite being one of the top 7 teams in the league, or the 7th best team in the league in defensive turnover percentage, and again, turnover percentage isn't it's not perfect, right? Because that includes dead ball turnovers, that includes stuff, the turnovers you just can't run off of. But cleaning the glass, and that number is courtesy of cleaning the glass. Cleaning the glass also has a frequency of how often teams run off steals. So when your team gets a steal, how often do they run? The Blazers are 19th. We're 19th in the NBA in frequency of running off steals. A below average team in terms of running off steals. For instance, a team like the Wizards, who plays incredibly fast, we're number 1 in the league in running off steals. I think Denny Avdia, a dude who loves Turbo, my man Turbo, who loves to run, will help the Blazers just naturally push the pace. Coaches can ask and ask and ask. Player tendencies has a lot to do with this. Coaching can fix this a little bit. This is one of the things I do believe coaching could impact. But player tendencies mixed with coaching, I think Avdia will help in that area a little bit. I think maybe the comfort of having, Scoot Henderson in year 2, someone who in theory wants to play fast but never did as a rookie, that could help a little bit. But they were below average in frequency of running off steals. They were really bad, 24th in running off live rebounds. Avdia will help there. But it's saying Denny will help at every one of these things is maybe misrepresenting how much one individual can change things. I've said this a bunch and I'll say it again here. I think Denny answers so many questions and is going to be really helpful in terms of skill sets, but in terms of just sort of raw impact, saying, oh, Denny will fix it, Denny will fix it, Denny will fix it, is that's overstepping expectations. He's going to be helpful, but it's the level to which he can be helpful. So I think they were 19th in running off steals. Say they improved to 13th, right? They're from below average to the other side of slightly above average. And then running off live rebounds from 24th to 20th. Last year, they were 27th in total transition frequency. They ran the third least often in the league. They were one of the teams that just didn't run. I think it was a thing that they preached they were going to do, and they were going to do it, and they're going to do it. And then they just never did it. And it was a big problem because they were a terrible half-court team, and they also had a bunch of half-court chances. Some of that is if you take the ball out of the net, if you're a bad defensive team in terms of scoring, giving up buckets, you can't run no matter how quickly you push. You don't a make. You cannot get it doesn't get scored as a transition bucket the way they track things. But not running off steals at an above average rate, I think, is something you can change, something you can focus on, something you can do better. All of that is to say, I expect an incremental improvement across the board in this area. I bet they'll be a little better on defense, maybe not a ton, and it's hard to know ranking-wise. I wouldn't be surprised if they're still bottom third in the league, but say they're, I guess the highest you can be in the bottom third of the league is 21. So maybe I think they're going to be in the bottom half of the league at 20 or something like that. But I still think they're going to be one of the 10 worst defenses in the league, just because of their personnel. That's who they have. They have potential to be a lot better than that, but not a lot better. They have potential to be better than that, but I don't know how much better is what I was trying to say there. And I think that they have more better defenders, and they were already a good team at forcing turnovers, and they basically didn't lose anyone that was someone who's going to force turnovers at a high level. They can do it more. They can run more. They just have to commit to it. And this, I think, is one of my of the many, but a criticism of sort of the Billups tenure is at training at media day last year, that was the number one thing you heard from the team. They're going to play fast. And then they never did. And they just couldn't establish an identity that they set out heading into camp to absolutely be part of who they are. And they just could never instill it. And running, bad teams can run. You can decide to run. The Wizards, a horrendous team. They played incredibly fast. Like, you can choose the pace you play at. You can't really choose the pace the other team plays at. But I hope that the Blazers still maintain that could be like fit their skill set, because I think you get less Jeremy Grant in the half court and more of him running in transition, more Shaedon Sharpe running in transition, more Scoot pushing against non-set defenses. Anthony Simons, who doesn't like to maybe push the pace with the ball in his hands because he's not a big rim pressure guy, but him running on the wings and being a transition three-point shooter, an end-to-end rim running from DeAndre Ayton when he can do it. Toumani Camara playing at full speed. And in theory, Jabari Walker playing at full speed. I don't know about Matisse at full speed. Maybe that's not the move. But like, the Blazers have players that this team could play faster, and I hope they choose to do so. And I think they've improved their talent, not to mention Denny Avdia, a really good transition player. I just talked about him a lot, so I was shouting everyone else out. But like, Denny is maybe the guy who unlocks this and allows them to be the things that listener John wants the Blazers to be, which is a team that might still struggle, but still commits to a plan that fits their skill set. And I think they have the skill set to play a whole bunch, these skill sets to play a whole bunch faster. Okay, in the second segment, you already know who asked the question, but there's a question about versatility and how the Blazers can find that on this roster. Let's talk about that in segment number 2. Join me there, won't you? First, though, I want to tell you about the Gametime app. It's the place that rewards you if you are a procrastinator, with up to 60% off when you buy last-minute tickets. Gametime has everything. You can go to comedy shows, you can go to live theater, you can go to whatever you're looking for that's a major event, you're going to find it on Gametime. But for me and for you, dear listener, it's probably sporting events. What I like about Gametime is super easy to use, and then you get what you see is what you get. Pricing. You got the total upfront cost, no surprises at checkout. It's all in pricing is what they call it over at Gametime. And what I like about all in pricing is that when you pull up your tickets to go see maybe a late season Thorns or Timbers game here in Portland, if it says it's going to cost you $38 to get in the building, that's what you're going to pay at checkout. There's no surprises, there's no convenience fees, there's no nothing. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA. You got $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, use that redemption code LOCKEDONNBA. That's LOCKEDONNBA, and you'll get $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? It's game time. All right, let's keep it rolling on this beautiful special delivery mailbag. This next question does indeed come from listener Scott. Thank you, listener Scott. Scott emailed me lockedonblazerspod@gmail.com, and you can too. This is a much longer email from Scott. Scott, I cut this down to about a sentence. Scott mentioned, maybe I'll summarize it here. Scott mentioned that the best teams in the league have a lot of versatility, right? That guards who can toggle on and off the ball, forwards who can play multiple positions and kind of be playmakers when you need them to, scorers when you need them to, and bigs who can either play either 4 or 5 and like slide up and play a little small ball, or bigs who can shoot and kind of change the calculation for and geometry on defense. Versatility in skill set, versatility in sort of positional versatility, defensive versatility. And Scott worries that maybe the Blazers, while they do have that at sort of their secondary spots, like Denny Avdia has some of that. This is just like a pro Denny podcast. He's probably the Blazers' most versatile player. Toumani Camara has defensive versatility. I think in theory, Chris Murray has defensive versatility, but can he get on the court on offense? I think Jabari Walker offers that same kind of thing. Like he's like a 3-4-5. He's like a 3-4 who's more of a 5. And there's some versatility there. But in terms of like the guys that they've invested in and the top of the draft, at the top of the lottery, maybe they don't possess a lot of versatility necessarily. And that is Scott's concern here in this question. And Scott asks, what skills do Scoot, Shea, and Clingan, that's Scoot Henderson, Shaedon Sharpe, and Donovan Clingan, need to develop to achieve more lineup versatility and make the build part of this rebuild easier and more successful? Yeah. This is a good question because this kind of speaks to the challenge that the Blazers are in. They have some versatility within the back half of the roster, but then they've drafted some one-position guys. Scoot is a one-position guy. Donovan Clingan's a one-position guy. Shaedon Sharpe is in theory, a 2-3-ish, right? And he can play play maybe some on-ball stuff on offense, but I don't think he has shown the level of defensive chops to feel like really comfortable with him being like your primary wing stopper or even close to that, right? I think he's been bad on defense to begin his career. He's young, but like he has the tools to get there. There's been a lot of guys with tools who don't end up good defenders, but the book's not out on Shaedon Sharpe being a bad defensive player, although he has been in years 1 and 2, which is relatively common. I think Shai has like how Shai develops into like the sort of positional versatility that allows this rebuild to be a little bit easier. It's just the fully actualized version of himself. I think he can play either of the wing spots, the 2 and the 3. He probably can't swing up to 4, but he can play comfortably there. He can play on the ball and off the ball on offense. It's just whether he can, when he is an off-ball guy, when he can he toggle into being aggressive and being an on-ball guy in those same sets, or like can he continue to be an aggressive and a in sort of go mode when he's off script, when it isn't like, hey, Shaedon, go score. Can he be like that? That is his challenge. I don't think it's necessarily talent. It's not skill with him. It's just like, can his talent be actualized? Defensively, like he's got the tools, like I said, tools, but it's not quite there. We'll just ignore that for now because I think that'll be a struggle for him. And I've said this on the show before. It's like, let's let your strengths be strong and then worry about the other stuff. But he can score off the bounce. He can score off the ball. He's a good cutter. Sharpe has the sort of the 3 of these youngsters the Blazers have drafted with top 7 picks in each of the last 3 drafts. He's clearly the most versatile of them, although he isn't like this wide ranging, like can play shooting guard and power forward, like, Magic Paul George type of thing. But he certainly has the most versatility. Clingan, I just don't think versatility is going to be part of his game. He's going to be a giant person. And even if he ends up really good, the high-end version of him is not someone who's like magically playing power forward, right? There's a world in where he develops to play like as a plus shooter, but even then, it's not like you think like Brook Lopez type, where it's like, it's not like Brook Lopez's skill is versatility. Brook Lopez's skill is that he has a unique skill set on offense, and he's a really good rim protector on defense. Brook Lopez is also the Brooklyn's all-time, or New Jersey / Brooklyn's all-time leading scorer. He was a freaking bucket. So like, it's just different. It's a different glow up for Clingan. His world is being really good as a drop big. Like, that's the best version of Clingan. I don't think there's a versatility there. He's a one-position player to me. It doesn't mean that he can't be good. It just means that he can't fit into this particular checkbox that Scott has proposed, where it's like, can the Blazers find youngsters with versatility? I don't think Clingan is that, right? Maybe the other young guys, the back half of the roster, and Tumani and Clingan, Tumani and Denny are versatile enough that it covers up for some of Clingan's skills. But like, I think what Clingan's going to be is a big, like, one type of coverage, maybe a little bit of switching, but not any heavy doses of it's guarding on the perimeter. He's going to be a protect the basket because you're gigantic and you have really good defensive feel. Like, that's the best version of him. Scoot, though, what could he do to become more versatile? This is an interesting question, right? Because he can't get bigger. And the true mark of versatility is that you are gigantic, 6'9", 6'10", but you have skills of someone who is 6'2", 6'3", right? Like Scoot's always gonna be 6'2", 6'3". Hopefully he develops more of the skills that you need to have to be 6'2", 6'3", and be successful in the league. But like, he's never going to be that sort of like big hybrid giant wing, right? He's never going to be Jason Tatum. He's never going to be Jaylen Brown, right? He's never going to be, he's not going to get taller. Yeah, I guess he could. He's young, but like, realistically, he's not going to get significantly taller to the point where we're talking about this incredible versatility, right? So for Scoot, I think it's the ability to play off the ball, this ability to toggle from the best and kind of only version of Scoot that has looked good is get the ball in your hands, get to make decisions, run pick and rolls, and be a playmaker and facilitator, right? That's the best version of Scoot. And you don't want to take the ball out of his hands entirely because his best skill is probably passing. Like, he's a high-level passer as a youngster, and you assume that he will grow with that and get smarter and better and cut down on all the turnovers that made some of his high-level passing a little bit frustrating, because he also made some pretty puzzling turnovers where he determined some stuff before getting to it. But I think the key for Scoot is try to be a guy who can play off the ball in 2 different ways. One of those ways is shooting. this is a good one. Scoot, I mentioned this on the show a bunch, is that he was always better on pull-up three-pointers, pull-up jump shots than he was on catch-and-shoot jumpers. You don't really take catch-and-shoot twos in the modern NBA. That's just not really a shot that exists for too many folks, except for my man, DeAndre Ayton, but like it's not a typical shot. So like we're talking three-pointers when I give you these numbers here. Again, these are courtesy of, these are from NBA.com. Scoot Henderson shot 30.5% on catch-and-shoot threes and 33% on pull-up threes, right? He was just a little bit better on pull-ups. But here's the real number. Scoot Henderson on three-pointers where he took no dribbles, catch, shoot, 31.7% of his zero dribble threes, 31.7%. Bad, right? On one dribble threes, he shot 40%. Dude needs a comfort dribble. He needs a comfort dribble. And it's hard to play off the ball if you don't have that. He needs that rhythm dribble. I should call it a rhythm dribble. Comfort dribble is a little insulting. I apologize. He needs a rhythm dribble, right? So it's shooting. Can he improve his catch and shoot ability? Can he improve his zero dribble jump shots? Like if he can do that, he doesn't need to be a lights out shooter to play off the ball, but he does need to be a respectable shooter. He needs to shoot flirt with league average. It was like 36%. He finished the year shooting better from three than he certainly looked like he was going to start. When he gets there, I think he's okay. Some of that is just, if he needs the ball in his hands to get the rhythm dribble, then he can't be an off ball guy because it's hard to take a catch and shoot, dribble, and still have time to get a clean shot off. So that's one way to improve. The other way to improve is being an elite cutter. He's got some skills to be an elite cutter. He's big. He's big, broad shoulders, long arms, with giant hands, right? Like he could be a guy who explodes from the corner when teams are helping off of him and is just a menace on the backside. Explodes like those slot cuts when you're on the high wing on the opposite of the ball and it goes into the post or it goes into the corner or someone makes a drive or they move middle and you just explode to the middle of the paint, catch it, and go up quickly. And Scoot maybe can use some of his athleticism to be where he doesn't have to dribble. When he jumps off 2 feet, he doesn't fly. When he jumps off 1 foot, Scoot can be really, really athletic. I think that's some of his issues when you see him drive is that he gets caught jumping off 2 feet and he looks small. In some ways, timing your cut so you can jump off 1 foot because you're surprising people can help him be a more often 1 foot jumper and can be a better off-ball player. I don't think any of the youngsters, to Scott's point, I don't think Scoot or Shea or Klingon screams versatility. But I think Scoot has some ways to become a more versatile guard. Shaedon just has to be if Shaedon becomes the best version of himself, the versatility will come with it. And Klingon's just never going to be that, I don't think, but he can still be a good player. It's just he's versatile is not going to be a thing that he is. Okay. I got another question and I told listeners not to send me trade questions. And then one of you still did. And I respect the hustle. Join me in the third segment. We'll answer a forbidden trade question. First, though, I want to tell you about eBay Motors. There's 3 words you need to know with eBay Motors: passion, drive, and patience. It's the formula for winning championships, and it's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you're always going to find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need and the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Still a pass first point guard. I'm still Mike Richmond. You are still listening to Locked On Blazers. I'm still running through a little mailbag, a little special delivery mailbag. This last question comes from CT. And on yesterday's program, on Monday's program, I put out a call for mailbag questions. Today, we're going to have a mailbag show this week. Can you send me some questions? And and I said, don't send me trade questions. I'm just going to ignore them. And for the most part, everybody did. They said, you know what? That's not what Mike wants. Mike wants, sort of roster building theoretical questions and stuff that he can kind of tease out a little more with a little more sort of higher level thoughts than just sort of like, does this trade work? Grade it, which I find to be a little bit boring. And then listener CT sends the following. I edited this a little bit. This is pretty much the word for word email here. Look, I know you said you didn't want trade questions, but how about a trade adjacent question? Can the Blazers balance showcasing Rob Williams III for interested teams like the New York Knicks and still make room for Donovan Clingan to get necessary developmental minutes? Not just Clingan and Rob Williams, but the other youngsters versus vets as well. Okay, here's the context here. Brian Windhorst on ESPN today, he was on NBA Today, and he mentioned that among the sort of like potential trade candidates that the New York Knicks could be eyeing would be Rob Williams of the Portland Trailblazers, and he mentioned that any team looking for a center will be monitoring and could call the Blazers on Rob Williams. There's a couple of ways to read this. One is that it's very obvious that Rob Williams is a trade candidate because the Blazers have DeAndre Ayton and they have Donovan Clingan, and Windhorst mentioned as much, but I've been following Brian Windhorst's work for 2 decades. He wouldn't mention this unless there was a little bit of stuff there. Not to say the Blazers are actively shopping Rob Williams. I bet they're actively shopping Rob Williams, but like that's not the reporting. The reporting is that Williams could be a target for teams that are interested and need center help because clearly at his height, he's really helpful, but for the Blazers in their current situation, they have other centers that they need to get onto the court with, their commitment to DeAndre Ayton and drafting Donovan Clingan 7. And the Knicks were mentioned as a team, and the Knicks certainly, they're missing Hartenstein. I think they're a team that could use some center help. I think in New Orleans could use some center help. The question, and what I'm not going to do necessarily here is like, I don't know what Rob Williams' trade value would be. But I think to the point, and this is why I'm including this question, is like CT is saying like, how do the Blazers balance showcasing Rob Williams when you want to, Rob's been hurt, right? And the only way that teams can know that he's healthy is if he gets out on the floor and shows that he can play, right? There's something to that. Obviously his agent could tell them and the Blazers could tell them, but the way to kind of like, the proof of concept is him like playing basketball minutes and looking good. But if Rob Williams plays, it does complicate the minutes available for Donovan Clingan, or it forces those two to play together in a second unit. And that's probably a pretty wonky pairing and is the best way to sort of use Donovan Clingan's rookie season is to put him in a situation where he's playing a wonky pairing that doesn't complement his skill set. Is the best place to show that Rob Williams still got it, is to put him in a wonky pairing. Or do you choose who plays each night and you get the backup minutes, you're going to play 16 minutes? Does Rob have such a sort of conservative return to play plan where he's playing twice a week or something like that? And if he's playing twice a week, is that an appealing trade package, right? So I think this speaks to sort of the Blazers' challenge because of the moves they have yet to make. There's plenty of speculation that Jeremy Grant has been, the Lakers are interested in Jeremy Grant and all that. And like right here on this podcast, into this very microphone, I've mentioned that the Blazers should explore trades for Anthony Simons and Jeremy Grant. They should have done it at the trade deadline. I was saying that then. I thought they absolutely should have, if not just outright traded them this summer. They've chosen not to. I think at some point you have to look in the mirror and decide whether you are going to trade DeAndre Ayton or like create an interesting situation with him and Donovan Clingan going forward. I think the writing's on the wall for DA, but I'm sure many of you disagree and think that 2 centers can exist forever. And I appreciate that positivity. But I only think Rob Williams is the vet that really complicates things. Anthony Simons isn't really getting in the way of Scoot Henderson's minutes. Is it weird that Scoot Henderson's going to come off the bench as a number 3 overall pick for a team that's like this bad? And like, yeah, I think it's a little weird, but it's not that big of a deal. He wasn't very good in his rookie season, and there's still a path to him pretty easily playing 28 minutes a night. It's not tricky. That's fine. DeAndre Ayton is indeed in front of Clingan, but Clingan's not ready to play 35 minutes a night in the NBA, maybe never will be. He's going to be playing in the teens, and I think that's fine, and there's space for him to play in the teens on the roster unless Rob Williams plays. Jeremy Grant isn't in front of anyone. It would make sense for the Blazers to move on from him at some point in the next few seasons, but it's not dire. The reason it's more dire with, say, like Anthony Simons is because he has 2 years left on his contract and he's extension eligible, and it puts you in a weird situation. Are you going to pay Ant? Are you going to let him? It's trickier. Ayton, I don't think has like a ton of market appeal at his price, but him becoming an expiring contract might make him more tradable, but it also could make teams feel a little bit weary because it's like, what if he does work out? He can still walk, right? Like it's a tightrope walk with him for sure. Grant, it's the length of his contract is the hold up. It's not the dollar signs. But but Ant and Grant and DA, they're not really in the way. They're not in the way. Like, as much as I think the Blazers should have already moved on and should move on from those guys moving forward, they're not really clogging up the plan necessarily. It's just a little bit of a strange decision as opposed to like an outwardly negative one. I think it's a little bit odd. I think the way the Blazers treated this whole summer was pretty weird, but like, it's not like objectively bad. It's fine. Rob Williams complicates things though, because you want Klingon to play. You don't draft a guy 7th overall and end up like, the Blazers are going to be one of the worst teams in the league. Even if they like overachieve, they're not going to make the playoffs, and they're going to end up one of the, it's like they're either going to be one of the 3 worst teams in the league, or if they get good, they're going to be one of the 9 worst teams in the league. It's like the West is just too hard for them. They would have to overachieve to a level that I just don't think is possible. And if you're going to be that, like if you're going to be a team that is like actively pursuing draft picks in the spring and losing on purpose, not having like positive developmental roles carved out for your young players that you've drafted in the lottery so you can be sure of what they can be or more certain of what they can be is a weird decision. And so like the Rob Williams stuff is a little bit in the way of the Klingon thing. So how do they balance it? I either think they just trade Rob like early into the season, or even in the coming days, and just and by coming days I mean like between now and Thanksgiving or something. It's like they make the move early and say like, hey, we don't think we at one point he seemed like a surefire get a 1st round pick type of guy, but like the reality is the reality, and let's just get some things that we like, a 2nd round pick and a heavily protected 1st that becomes a couple seconds, whatever, like something like that. Like whatever it might look like, if they get the Victor Oladipo, Steven Adams package swap type of thing. So like, there's some of it is like you make the trade early. Some of it is you're creative with like on day, off day, and some of it is you just play lineups that don't work. That's I think one of the most interesting things about how they approach this season. You want Klingon to play. You want Scoot to play. You want Denny and Tumani to get your minutes too. Scoot, Denny, Tumani, the young guards or the young forwards and the young point guard, they got room. Klingon, he's not going to demand a bunch of minutes, but he should be able to be, if healthy, on the court every single night. Having a player who's just straight up better than him in front of him, and with Rob Williams, who would be like, who obviously is going to want to play, that might complicate things. And I think that is the only balancing act. And to answer your question, CT, I don't know how they do it. They have a couple options, but I'm not exactly sure how they do it. I assume it ends in a trade, but it's like when? If it's in February, that's 50 some games, right? Like that's a deep into the season. If it's before that, I think it can get solved sooner. And just as another sort of important note here, when you're trading guys who make money, like Rob Williams has like 12 million this year, 13 the next, right? He's relatively cheap and could be much easier to trade and not take back like big contracts, or like someone who's definitely going to play, right? You could trade him and have someone who's out of the rotation pretty comfortably. But when you're trading Anthony Simons, you're trading Jeremy Grant, you're trading DeAndre Ayton, guys who are making, $25 to $35 million a year, you are trading back for players who are either paid a bunch of money and it's a mess to like kind of take them on the books, or they're just like players. They're like rotational NBA players, and they're going to also gum up the rotations and get in guys' way. So it's like, there is a balance with trading those gentlemen, which is some of the reason why I don't think it's like incredibly imperative that if they waited this long, they don't need to do it now. They just have to, they need to be cognizant of making sure that their young players get all of the opportunities and they get as much data on their young players as possible, because that was a big failing of last season, in large part because of injuries that out of the Blazers' control. But if it's in your control, maximize your opportunities. Okay, that's going to do it for today's show. We're going to have one more this week on Friday. Come back for that one. Tell your friends about the podcast. And the next week, 5 days a week for 10 months. The season is a-coming. If you enjoy the show, tell your friends about the program. LockedOnBlazersPod@gmail.com is the email address, but not what I was trying to promote there. This show is available on all platforms, and it's free everywhere you get it, including YouTube. I appreciate you listening. I'll talk to you soon.